Hello and welcome to the Admin Bar. We are here to bring you another episode, and unfortunately, Facebook took a complete dump this morning, so we couldn't do this one live. So we are being recorded this time, but that's okay. Don't worry. This is episode number 6, and we have a pretty good little show lined up for you. So, of course, I am Kyle Van Duzen. I own Ogle Web Design just outside of Fort Worth, Texas. And with me, as always, is Matt Siebert. Hello, Matt.
How's it going, Kyle? And Liam, our guest.
Hello.
Yes, we have here with us today Liam Clisham, right? Did I get it right?
You got it.
Okay, I got it close enough. I had to spell it my own way, and that's a little bit dicey. And Liam is here to kind of tell us his story about how he wound up being a pretty badass motion designer. So we're excited to bring you that story here today. And I think that's all I got as far as an intro. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, Liam and I actually have known each other for about 14, 15 years. He was a coworker at my very first job, selling video games at GameStop, which at the time was awesome. And then corporate got involved, and it turned out to be a terrible job. But that's my experience with it. But through that, Liam and I we actually became really good friends and hung out a lot. And I was able to see his career evolve over the years. He started doing one thing, and that led to another, and that led to even more. And that's exactly why we're having him on the show today, because his story, I think, not only is it incredibly interesting, but I think that it'll help a lot of people just starting out and kind of trying to learn their own path.
Yeah, I think, as far as just using my own experience, when I first started doing this, I was saying yes to everything and trying to be all things to all people. And what you quickly realize is that's pretty, you're just never going to accomplish that. So, after time, we kind of learn what we're good at and what we're not good at, and we kind of find ways to make all that work. So as far as when you guys met and you were slinging games at GameStop, were you doing any kind of creative work at that time, Liam?
Sort of, not really. So when I was in high school, I went to a high school that had a pretty nice creative wing to it. So we had a graphic design program. If you went through the whole program, you're supposed to come out of that with an AA in graphic design. So I got really into graphic design in like 2004. And upon graduation, I kind of wanted to take a year off, didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I went to the local college and was kind of going, but also just much more interested in hanging out with girls and partying, and got into the retail scene and kind of just lost track of being creative. And around 2008, 2009, when the economy started to turn, like Matt was just saying about GameStop becoming really corporate, I decided I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I moved from New Hampshire to Maryland and went back to college and started going to school for graphic design. And my junior year of school or so, I found a motion design program that someone just recommended as just a filler class. And I was like, I guess this could be cool. I didn't really know what it was. And I took it and I was like, oh man, this is really awesome. It's like taking graphic design and merging it into video and turning it into animation and bringing it to life. So not having something hanging on the wall for a couple of weeks and going in the trash and never seeing it again. It's actually coming to life and turning into a video. So pretty much from that point forward, I wanted to be a motion designer. And this was about 2012-ish, 2011. So during the time that I moved back to Maryland, though, I was freelancing as a graphic designer and then a web designer, and trying to do everything for everyone, just trying to make as much money as I could, thinking that saying yes, like you were saying, would lead to that. And then in the end, I found out the more that I niche down into motion design and like really find what I'm passionate about in motion design, the more I end up being happier about what I'm doing, and the more creatively fulfilled I feel as well. And I have a lot more free time as well too. I can outsource stuff to people that I don't really want to do, but it's still under my name, while still feeling a little bit creative, like being a creative director over that, and still working on the projects I want to as well. So I've definitely had like a very long path of going from like graphic design generalist to like kind of digital design, web, all the way into motion design and 3D now.
Yeah, and you said something that kind of resonates too is, you know, a lot of well, us here and then a lot of people that are watching this have started their own business because they want a certain type of lifestyle and they want to be able to enjoy what they do. And the minute this becomes a job, you know, you lose all of that. So that's another thing about finding your path is, you know, being able to enjoy what you do every day. So that's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna like kind of to go off that, you know, everybody wants to start their own company and freelance and everything, but they don't realize like the hardships that come with it too. Like you have to learn not just your craft and like get better at that every day, but then you're also learning the business side of things too. And it's just, if you have all that on your plate, you're going to get burnt out. And if you can focus on the creative side that you're most passionate about, then the business side is just kind of there in the background. Like it doesn't have to burn you out having two things coming at you at the same time.
Yeah, but at the same time too, I think that working at GameStop together, I know for me that that particular vein of sales where you know it was really structured, it was really rigid. We needed to hit numbers every week, and if you didn't, like, I mean, you were, I think, what, 3 weeks in a row and you're gone if you didn't hit the numbers that you needed to, and there was no incentive to it aside from keeping your job. One of the reasons that I left. But I think that that also, you know, it helped me learn sales and how to talk to people and how to get excited about products and how to do all that too. So, you know, that definitely helped, you know, the beginning of the journey for sure.
Yeah, totally. Like, I feel like everybody should have a job like that at some point, especially if you want to start your own business, either like car salesman or like slinging games at GameStop and pushing things on people and learning how to get excited about products. Whether or not there's commission, you know, that's a bonus if it's there. But I agree. Like, if I hadn't worked at GameStop, I don't think I would be able to talk to clients the way that I'm able to.
Yeah, I know for a fact I couldn't. When I first started there, there was my boss was named Andy, and the dude.
Shout out to Andy.
Shout out to Andy. I mean, my life would be completely different without that guy. Like his sense of sales and his sense of like just talking to people and creating a sense of like kind of knowing each other within a very short amount of time was like unparalleled. I mean, the guy was a genius when it came to that stuff. You know, so I think that it really helped me a lot. But let's get a little bit back towards Liam's, you know, evolution, if you want to call it that.
Yeah,
So
we spanned a pretty big gap there.
yeah. So you started in graphic design and more like, you know, flat stuff. What about that did you? Why did you want to pull away from that and try something else? Like, what hurdles did you face?
So I guess I didn't really know I wanted to until it was made aware to me. So, you know, I really liked graphic design in high school and getting into it, making posters and everything. And then when I went back to college, it still like really interested me. I still love design and the problem solving that comes with that. But when I was introduced to motion design, it really opened my eye to like, man, like there's a whole nother world of design that people don't even know about that you can go down. And I'm sure that's true for like a lot of different fields in graphic design. Like there's web design, there's digital design. The more screens that there are in like stadiums and stuff, there's, you know, you're building UX and stuff and user experience for going into a stadium based on those screens. And then there's motion design side of things. There's building design for apps. So there's so many avenues that people don't think about. Like they start to go down this one path and they might think that they're happy and passionate about it, and then it might trickle into another doorway and see, oh wow, there's a whole nother world over here that I can go down. And you start going into it and you find out that, man, what I thought was happiness before was just kind of like contentment. And now like this is actually really enjoyable. So for me, I think I was just mostly content. Like I was like, this is fine. Like I can do this for the rest of my life, I guess. And
Making a living, like doing something that's, you know, you do have passion for.
Right. But like the true passion came out, as I was saying, like being able to bring something to life. Like, you know, I'm not throwing a poster on a wall and it's going in the trash. I'm making a character move, or I'm communicating to someone not just through imagery but through movement as well in time. So it was just an eye opener to me. So I wouldn't say I overcame any hurdles with it. I just got exposed to something I didn't know was out there.
Yeah, and you got to think too, like, even, you never reach your destination necessarily, especially when you're working for yourself like this and you're working in a field that relies so heavily on technology. Those things are changing all the time, so you got to be able to adapt and be able to pivot and move yourself. But you never really know where things are going to lead. So without the interest in just graphic design in general, I mean, that was a lot of the foundation that allows you to be able to do the things you're doing now, or be able to understand the concepts that are kind of underlying for what you need to be able to do. So there's always learning opportunities, even if it's something, even if it's selling games at GameStop, and then you turn around and say, okay, well, now when I go into a customer meeting with a potential client, I already have all these things I learned from that experience. So I think all those things are important, and to remember that it's kind of the journey that's the important part more than the destination. So there's all kinds of things you can always be learning from as you go along.
Yeah, it's kind of like taking like a nationwide road trip in ways, and like maybe you're going along and you have this one destination of you want to get to San Francisco or wherever on the West Coast, but your car breaks down, and so you get stuck somewhere for a little while, and then you start to learn about like a mountain range off to the north or something. Like, oh, well, I want to deviate over there and go see this because the townspeople keep telling me about it, and you go that way, and then you start going more north, and you start finding new paths that you didn't even think were on your map, and you still can get to where you want to go, but it doesn't have to be so linear. And you can always change your final destination as well. Like maybe as you're going north, you decide, well, now that I'm going north, I want to go to Canada instead. I seem to like what's happening up here. I like the forestry and everything, so let's keep going that way instead of San Francisco.
I like that analogy. That's that works really well.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things too, like, when I first started this business and went out on my own, I had this certain sales goal I wanted to hit, for a year. I basically wanted to replace the salary I was making at my full-time job. And I was able to hit that goal pretty quickly, but what you think is going to be the feeling when you accomplish that, it just doesn't really happen. Then you're like, okay, yeah, I'm making this now, so you don't get that like payoff that you might think is there. So you kind of always have to have like a new carrot in front of you, so you always kind of got to be chasing something a little bit. So, always thinking that you're going to reach this pinnacle and everything's just going to be success from there on out is kind of misguided as well.
Yeah, like somebody's definition of success should, in my opinion, always be evolving. Like you're saying, like once you get to one carrot, you need to get to another one and to another one. So your goal this year may have been, I want to make $100,000. Let's just say that. But maybe year two is you want to bring on a second employee so you can actually reach your next goal of like 500,000 or $1 million or whatever. And you need employees to be able to do that. So it all starts to compound on itself, and you definitely need to stack those goals.
So when you were doing graphic design work initially, I guess post GameStop era, were you working for other companies, or did you start out with your own company, or how did that go?
I just started out with my own name mostly. Like I got hired by like small businesses, like a tattoo parlor in Maryland hired me to make their website, and like some real estate agents had me make flyers and stuff. So it wasn't great, but at the time it seemed great. It's like, all right, a new client. And like we were talking about earlier, like say yes to everything, because you just want to make those contacts and like get some kind of income coming in. But then looking back on it, it's like those jobs were super small.
And I'm only assuming, but the clients were probably really nitpicky and very needy at that point too.
Yeah, like talking about like maybe $100 project. Like, all right, I need to make this flyer adjustment. I'm going to make $100 here, and no, you make the adjustment, and then they have 5 revisions, even though it's exactly what they wanted, and then you end up making the same thing. It's like, man, I made less than I would make at McDonald's at that point,
Right.
So you definitely can't say yes to everything, and it kind of goes to what we were talking about offline a little bit too. Like you're always going to have projects that pay for your lifestyle, but then projects that fulfill you creatively as well, and we can start to deviate into that if you guys want to.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to lay on us the little line you
Yeah, I
had
was
for
just
that
gonna say it sums it up perfectly.
Yeah, so in motion design, what you do is you cut a reel, and that reel is usually a quick 30-second to 1 minute synopsis of your best work through the year. So we have this saying that you have jobs that are for the reel, and you have jobs that are for the meal, or like 5 jobs that are for the meal, and maybe like one where you're busting your ass and like doing terrible work for a really high paying job, and like maybe you make $10,000 off that job. But then you'll come to a client that has this awesome project, and they're starting up, and maybe they're starting a new company that's going to do awesome things for the world, but they only have like $2,000. But creatively, you can do whatever you want, and it hits so much better with the audience, and you get more clients because of that, and it just kind of trickles. So it's kind of this balancing effect of, all right, I got to do this job because it's going to pay my bills for the next 3 months, but then after those 3 months, or during those 3 months, you can take on a less paying job that's more creative, and you can show that off in your reel. And then the next client that comes to you and they say, I want that, then you can say, well, that costs $20,000, or that costs how much, even though it was only $2,000.
Right. Now you can eat your reel, and then you'll be good to go.
Yeah, we're also we're gonna link to the reel as well, because it's pretty badass. It's really it's creative for sure.
Thanks. Yeah. It's taking time.
I'm sure. Yeah. All good things do. You know, and there's actually there's other facets to motion design, not just, you know, the motion aspect of it, but you do like 3D renderings and like model creations too.
Yeah. So like product launches, Matt hired me like 6 months ago or something for a website that needed to have products, and because they're a construction company, it's kind of hard to do because they were in the ground and cement. So we did 3D renderings for those, because you couldn't just have a photographer go out to the site and get the angles that we needed. So
yeah, and they came out phenomenally. We created rack cards and sell sheets and a bunch of like marketing collateral with them. We did some like pull-up banners. But the really cool part is, because they are 3D models, they were able to import them to the website and display them as 3D, so that, you know, potential buyers can go on there and actually rotate them around and see them in a full 3D space, which, I mean, that's super cool and well worth the investment.
Yeah, like I just worked on a project with my buddy Mark, and it's for Smith goggles, like the snowboarding goggles, and they have new goggles coming out, and they're not ready for production yet, but we did the video already because we modeled it in 3D, and so they can start promoting it now, like 3 months in advance, and put it on their website. So if there's anyone that's listening and thinking about like, how can I use a motion designer, that's how. Like, you can build your website and say to your client, hey, if you have any products that you're launching, or they're coming onto the scene with something new that they haven't prototyped yet, then we can prototype it for you, put it out there, and get interest involved, and start having clients coming to the website more and more, because they can actually see the product, and it's not just text and like sketches saying what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the visual aid there is hugely important, especially for new products. And if they don't have a physical one to take photos of, Liam's your guy.
Yeah, like it's even gotten to the point where it's more cost effective to do 3D renders, because you have a photographer and they need to take pictures of, say, 500 helmets or something. That's days of work, where for me, if I have that model, I say, all right, I need 50 takes of this, and each take, let's have it red, blue, green, whatever, and it will just automatically populate those. And so what may take a photographer a couple weeks of work, I can do in like 2 days.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, that's super awesome. Yeah, I think, you know, talking about, you know, where people start their career and where they end up, and that not being the exact path that they thought they might follow. I think we see a lot of people that, you know, get into the WordPress space, because that's kind of where me and Matt spend most of our time talking about. And so many people talk about the importance of like niching down and finding this right audience and stuff like that. And I've seen some people kind of force that, you know, so they say, okay, well, you know, this just sounds good to me, or I'd like to work with these kind of customers, without maybe having that experience, or kind of learning what goes into that kind of project. So I think your story kind of illustrates that, where you are now, if you went back to 2004, I think you said, you probably would have had no idea that this is where you were going to end up. And then maybe, 10 years from now, you're doing something completely different from here. But it's kind of part of this just goes from experience, and you kind of building that catalog of things you do and what you know about, and finding where your interest kind of leads you, like that roadmap we were talking about. And Matt, you kind of have, me and you kind of have some similarities in how we started in this too.
Mm-hmm.
When you started, you were doing just graphic design, print work type stuff, right?
Yep, absolutely. With a little bit of branding, which I honestly don't touch anymore. I have people to do that for me because like I was saying earlier before the show started, it kills my soul a little bit to create a logo for somebody.
Yeah, and I would say, like, going off that, there's work that I don't do anymore. Like, I mostly focus on 3D work. That's probably about 60 to 70% of what I do. And then for the 2D animation type work and explainer video stuff, I'll outsource that. And so if you're in your career and you're trying to change paths a little bit or pivot, don't be afraid to offset or offload some of that work onto somebody. Like, still keep your clients happy and coming in, but take the risk of hiring somebody that really enjoys what you're doing. Because for me, if I'm still doing 2D work, I'm half-assing it a little bit and not putting it in as much effort as I probably should to make the client happy. And like, they'll come out happy, but it's not that like under promise and over deliver that I like to do. It's just like, I got the job done. Where if I outsource to somebody who's really hyped up about doing 2D work, it's going to turn out better. And so like with Matt, with branding, if he outsources that, then it's going to turn out better because there's actual heart put into it. And so if you feel yourself burning out, maybe start to think about that. Maybe I can start offloading some of this so I can be more creatively fulfilled with this, and that will open doors to even more paths that you don't know are in front of you yet.
Yeah, that's true. And what you produce, without that heart attached to it, it can look great, but that it's not, what you would like. And I think, even if no one else knows, you still do, and that's a big thing, and I think that can lead to burnout pretty quickly. Now, Liam, you mentioned like trying to figure things out and like pivoting and like what are some of the signs that you noticed when you were doing flat print work or web work when you're creating these projects? What did you notice about them that you just weren't as fulfilled as you could be? Like, now that you've seen the light of motion design, like, what were those feelings? Just, because some people don't know that they're getting burnt out, or some people are frustrated but they're not entirely sure why. So like, what are some of those warning signs?
Yeah, so when I first started switching into motion design, I was still kind of getting off my normal graphic design clients and web design clients, and I could totally like sense how I would interact with design clients versus motion design clients, or web design clients versus motion design clients. Or I'd go to my wife and complain so much more about those clients than the clients of motion design. So I might get an email saying, hey, we need to update this page, or we need a new taxonomy or something because we're going to be rolling something out. I'd just be like, oh, fuck. like just leave me alone. Like, I don't want to deal with this. It's easy, but I just don't want to deal with it. And then I'd go complain to my wife, or I'd like just go watch something on Netflix and just like
procrastinate a little bit.
Yeah, procrastinate, stay away. Or I'd end up staying up really late because I put it off, and then I'd start losing sleep because of it, because I'm working on this project late and I didn't really want to be, and the procrastination rolls into that, and then it really starts to screw with your life. So if you feel like you're getting angry at clients when you really shouldn't be, like they're asking for something reasonable and you're starting to complain about stuff, I'd say that's the time that you need to start looking at, am I on the right path? Like, maybe you're on the right path, but maybe you need to start looking at different clients and what you want to be providing for those clients, or what the end game is. Like, if you still want to be that total package for somebody, like you still want to provide branding, like Matt, outsource it. You can still offer that to clients, but that doesn't mean it has to be you that takes it on. Like, if that's grinding your gears, then outsource it. But for me, I personally noticed myself just getting on edge a lot easier and being annoyed by things so much quicker than with a motion design client where I like, all right, I want to please them. I want to make this come to life and meet their goals.
And I noticed part of that too. Like I could relate to that, and it was like some of my customers are kind of coming to mind. Some of the ones that I'm just like, oh God, I don't even want to deal with this anymore. But you know, one thing when you're passionate about something, or when you love what you're doing, you love talking about it, and you love kind of teaching people about it or explaining about it. So you'll notice when a customer comes to you and maybe they don't understand what you're doing or why you did something, you know, you kind of see that as like an opportunity to be like, oh well, this is so awesome, and I want to tell you everything about it, you know,
just geek out on it a little bit.
Right. Versus going, oh, I don't even have time to deal with this. You know, like I'll just do whatever you want. I'm just going to be the button pusher, and here you go. Here's whatever, you know, whatever you were asking for. But I do want to ask, you know, if people start to see kind of these warning signs, or they're relating a lot to what you're saying, you know, it can be scary to take on something completely new. And though I haven't made huge jumps in my business, I would say my word of advice would be, you don't have to just stop what you're doing now and do something completely different. In fact, probably don't do that, because you'll have none for the meal. So how can you, or what would be your advice as far as if you know you want to make some pivots, but you still have to feed the family? You know, do you try to take on a different percentage of work, or how would you kind of recommend making that transition? And how long did some of those transitions last for you?
Yeah. So one of my buddies, Joey, says that you only get hired for the work that people see on your reel. So like when I first started out, I was a 2D animator for the most part, but I still did 3D work, and I was always way happier with those jobs. But my reel only showed 2D animation, so clients would come to me, and that's what they would expect. So I spent about a year and a half pivoting and making personal work of like 3D projects and modeling and lighting and animations. And if I got a 3D client, like just really busting my ass on that, so I could put it in my reel and show it off. So if you're feeling burnt out by the work that you're doing, but you know where you want to be going, you're going to have to hustle a little bit on the side and like do stuff for yourself. So if there's a type of branding that you want to work on, or a type of website that you want to start moving towards, or software that you want to learn, clients aren't going to know that you offer that if it's not in your portfolio. Like they're just going to expect that you do what you do on your website and what you're showing off. So you need to find a way to show off that you can do those things, whatever it is. And as far as finding out what those things are, it's kind of like for me, when I go to a conference, I get super pumped up, because it's like you were just saying, like I get to talk to people about the things that I love. And so like that feeling of like almost like Christmas, like, oh, I know I'm going to get this for Christmas, I can't wait. If you start to feel like almost like butterflies towards a certain venue of design or web design or whatever, that's where you should be going. And you may not realize it at the time, but as you start to like tiptoe into it, you're like, oh, I like this more, and I'm excited to talk about it. And when I talk to my spouse, or when I'm talking to friends about it, I'm getting even more excited about it, and it'll just drive your passion that way.
Yeah, and I think you made two really good points that I want to kind of stop on, so people make sure that they listen to that. Is one, you don't have to put everything in your portfolio. You know, you want to put the work that you want to get in your portfolio. And two, not everything in your portfolio has to be a job somebody paid you for. You know, you can make up something and put it in your portfolio. You know, there's no law that says these have to be paid jobs, you know, on there. So if there's something that you're leaning towards or you want to work on, you know, do it in your spare time. Stay up one night a little bit late, work on the weekend, come up with something, you know, just for yourself to show off. And I could see Matt has something to add here too.
Yeah, I think it's important also to reiterate that it took you a year and a half to make that pivot. You know, things don't just happen over the course of months. Even it's a long process to do it, and you know, I think that's important to know that it's going to take a little while, and like following whatever passion you have, like building that up, and especially if you're making a pivot from one thing to the next, like it might not happen right away, and you gotta push through it and actually kind of hunt down your passion.
Yeah, that makes me. I've you know, you hear everybody talking about like finding a niche to work in, and I understand the benefits of that and how important that could be. You know, in my case, it's, you know, a lot of people like me that are web designers find some sort of industry they work in. You know, because then you can be kind of a bigger fish in a smaller pond, charge more for jobs and kind of specialize in that kind of thing. And it's something that I'm definitely interested in, but something that I'm trying to let happen a little bit organically too. Because I've ran this business for a little over 2 years and only full time for like a year and a half. I know that I don't have to have that answer today, you know, so I still need to take on a bunch of jobs and kind of see, you know, what things excite me or what things that I know that I just don't want to do. And Matt, I think, is starting to find some things in that same vein where he kind of sees a direction he wants to go. So I don't know how much you want to talk about that at this point, but as far as specifics, but what are some of the things you've kind of noticed as you're leaning towards kind of finding a niche to specialize in?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that, well, for one, I've been doing this for about 10 years now, and maybe 5 or 6 doing it just on my own. And only now have I hit that like aha moment of this is the type of client that I want to work with. This is the type of venue that I want to supply, you know, assets to. And that literally happened, what, Kyle, a month ago, or like earlier this month.
Yeah.
I was leaving a meeting with a potential new client, and I called Kyle right afterwards. Like I pulled out off to the side of the road. I called him up and I was like, man, you know, I really think that that this is it. Like, this is what I want to focus on. These are the people that I want to work with. I've had several clients in the past that are in the same vein. They do similar things, or they have similar businesses, and each one of them, looking back, like, they're my favorite clients for sure. Their budgets are large enough to make it worth like really pursuing, and like they're just good people. You know, I've just found that like this particular industry that I'm gonna, over the next year or so, definitely try to break into. You know, every client interaction that I have with these people, it's just, you walk away feeling good, and I think that that's definitely why I'm going to focus on it.
It's those butterflies Liam was talking about.
Yeah, I fell in love with the clients. Like they won me over.
Yeah, and like I want to talk about too, that something that sparked when you were talking about pivoting and like how it can take a while, and like for you, you've been in the industry 10 years and you're just now figuring it out. And like I said, I've gone through like all these different stages and like iterations of a designer. And anytime you pivot, it's going to be like going to the gym for the first time and like working out a new muscle, or just working out in general. It's going to be painful, like for the first few weeks, first few months, maybe even for like a couple years, until you get used to it and you're really starting to get acquainted to it. And, you know, it's just one of those things, even with learning as you're making your way through your paths, that it's going to be painful. But if you can get through it, the next time you go back and revisit it, it's going to be a lot easier. So like the first time you go running, you may only be able to run a quarter mile, but then the next time you revisit it, you can start to run a half mile and things like that. So like you're always compounding on things and getting better. So if you start to look back at where you were a year ago or 5 years ago, you can really see the distance that you've come.
Yeah, it's true. I love keeping old work for that reason exactly, because like a lot of my old work, like now it's something that I'm maybe a little bit embarrassed to show, but I like to see it myself because it allows me to see like, man, yeah, I have progressed. Because when you're so close to it, it's hard to see that progress.
Yeah.
So I don't know that any of us have expressed any kind of story of maybe what you would define as like failure. You know, we're all, you know, growing our businesses and doing well, but you know, failure even like on a small level is probably the best teacher you can have, you know, because you learn so many things when you just screw up, you know. And how many times have you just been banging your head against the wall trying to get something to work, and failing over and over and over and over again. And then when you finally get it, that lesson is so burnt into your skull that, you know, that's never going to happen again. So if you do find yourself like feeling like, you know, you're having so much trouble with something, or something's not working out, think about all the things that you can learn from that. Or, maybe this isn't something that is right for you, or now you've kind of had those lessons and that hard part is already over.
Yeah, I think that goes with like showing your work too, and like work in progress. Like you need to show your stuff off and get feedback from people and fail and stuff, or you're just not going to improve. And last year, just as a joke, I put out an anti-reel, which was just like all the work that I've done on the side and like how crappy it was, like just so I could learn something. Like say I needed to learn how to do like a fluid sim, which is a fluid simulation, and it would just be like water flying through the air and like being completely absurd, but it was part of the learning process. And so and I failed with that, but when I had a client job come down the line, I knew how to take the steps to move forward with that. So it kind of goes back to like working on those passion projects a little bit, like show off that work, get feedback, fail, and move on. Like it's all part of the process.
Yeah, it's true, and I think that's one of the great things about the creative community too, is that we're all, for the most part, incredibly helpful and incredibly like willing to lend a hand to people that are just starting. And if you do, have maybe an inkling of an idea that there's another facet of design or creativity that you want to like look into that world, I'll bet you reach out to 5 different people in that community, and 3 of the 5 will be more than willing to share their story and to tell you what it's like, and maybe give you some pointers on how to get to where they are. I know that happened to me. I reached out to a graphic designer in Australia, and the guy, he sent me an email that was like 3 pages of typed, "This is how you do it." And that's what got me started. Like, not only because I was interested in graphic design, but just how open and like welcoming the design community as a whole is.
Yeah, I agree. And I've had those moments too, where somebody's reached out to me and it's like, yeah, man, I can't wait to tell you the stories that I've had, like tell you what not to do and like help you find whatever path you want to go on. And I would say most of the people I work with too are that way. Like you said, yeah, 3 out of 5, probably maybe even like close to 7 out of 8 even, like right. They would be willing to jump in and help somebody.
8.5 out of 9 even, maybe.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
But yeah, like there's very few, I think, like, I don't know what you call it, but like not like workforces, but there's very few industries where people are so incredibly willing to help other people out. We're not necessarily, I mean, we are all in the same vein, and we are all trying to snag clients, but we're not necessarily competition. We're all just friends, and that's unheard of, and it's awesome. I'm getting a little bit too mushy.
Yeah. Time for a group hug and some kumbaya.
Right.
Yeah. I've heard that about studios competing against each other too. Like, they'll be bidding on a job, and then they'll call somebody and say, "Hey, are you bidding on this job? What are you thinking about your cost on this?" And while they're bidding against each other, they're still helping each other out. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, before we wrap this up, Liam, I want to make sure that everybody can find you online, maybe in person. If you'll give us your home address, we can come by. No, how about we'll just stick to online. So tell us where we can find you and connect with you.
Sure. If you Google 531, so 5 spelled out, FIVE, numeral 31, you'll pretty much find me anywhere. It's got different iterations depending on Instagram and Twitter, squatting on usernames and stuff, but you'll find me. Other than that, you can do a search for Liam Clisham. I'm pretty certain I've linked 531 to that name as well for most things.
Awesome. And he is part of our group here in the admin bar. So if you have questions for him, I'm sure you can reach out and talk to him. He's there in the group. We got a bunch of Black Friday deals before we get out of here. I know this will be published before Black Friday, but check out in the group. We've had several discussions going on about all the kinds of awesome deals on software you can snag before the time is up. Life hack for this for next year probably for you is set a budget before Black Friday gets here. So no, I got $500 to spend, and then figure out what you want to spend your money on, because last year I went a little broke doing this, and this year I'm kind of bummed that I didn't budget a little bit more money for it, but you'll you'll stay on track a little bit better if you budget some money for that. Plus, you don't have to feel bad about not getting anything because you budgeted money for it. You got to spend it. It's kind of having like an expense account you got to get rid of. So there's a little life hack for you for today. Matt, you got anything to add before we get out of here today?
No, I don't think so. I think this episode was awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Liam, I appreciate you joining us today. Is there anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
No, thanks for having me on. It's very interesting being on a web design podcast for motion design. So I'm glad that we can kind of cross-populate and mingle and all that.
Yeah, but how many people in our group might end up somewhere completely different? A few years back when you're doing web jobs, this would have been the place for you to hang out. So you just never know where that's going to end up. And plus, I think all these groups are really good about finding connections and networking and stuff. And like Matt has used you for projects, and you talked about doing the 3D modeling and stuff. When Matt showed me what you had done for him, I'm like, man, I just want to like invent something now so I can have these cool models of it, So I think there's definitely ways people can connect. And now everybody here knows a badass motion designer. So when you need that kind of work, you can reach out to Liam. And Liam, here's a group of almost 500 people who want to build websites. So now you got plenty of people to offload that work too.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys. Well, I appreciate all the time today. And if y'all have any questions, just follow up with us in the group, and we'll talk to you on the next one.
Bye.